Which ayah?
2, 3, 4.
There you go. 2, 3, 4.
No.
2, 3.
You done that last lesson. There's one long ayah, isn't it?
Yeah.
No. No, it's 2, 3, 3.
Then you said
Yeah, 2, 3, 3.
2,
Sorry.
3, yeah.
I'm looking at the wrong ayah just because it started off with the same. Started off with wow. No, 2, 3, 3.
I was going to say Bashir, you're sacked as well. Good job on you. So I was just about to say Bashir, you're sacked.
I was on the next page. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. In continuing where we left off, we're going to surah Al-Baqarah on ayah 233, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ لَا تُكَلَّفُ نَفْسٌ إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود له بولده وعلى الوارث مثل ذلك فإن أراد فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما وإن أردتم أن تسترضعوا أولادكم فلا جناح عليكم إذا سلمتم ما آتيتم بالمعروف واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بما تعملون بصير. So within this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions and those mothers who they nurse their children for 2 complete years, because the Sharia has legislated that the child should be breastfed for 2 years and not more than this. It's not to exceed 2 years. And prior to 2 years coming to an end, the parents can start the weaning process, which we'll come to mention also. But the thing that's mentioned for those who want to complete the term of nursing, and it mentions حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ 2 whole years. And that's according to the Islamic calendar. Now the Islamic term of 2 years. وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Upon the fathers is to take care of the expenses of the mothers during that period, even if they are divorced, especially when they are divorced, that you are still to pay support towards the mother during the period of time. This is specific towards the mother during the time that she is feeding. That would cover her clothing and also her food, with that which is ma'roof, that which is reasonable. And one should not be charged with more than that which they can bear. Because unfortunately we live in a time today where you find when people get divorced, it becomes a tick for tack process. How can I get him back? I'm going to make him pay as much as I can in child support, X, Y, and Z. The Sharia is outside the window. Now it's about taking advantage at times. But within the Sharia, the father is only to pay that which he is able to pay. When it comes to supporting the wet nursing mother, the breastfeeding mother for 2 years, you cover that which is reasonable regarding clothing and food expenses. And it's not that she invoices him, he sends whatever he can as a support. When it comes to providing for your children, you pay for your children's clothing and the likes until they're of an age they're able to work, where they bear their own responsibility. So you're responsible for aiding your children. After that time, you don't have to pay anything towards the children or towards the mother of the child. But if a person doesn't, that's min ihsan, that's from his own goodness. But as for what is an obligation, the father takes care of the child until the child is of the age of being able to work and care for themselves. And that differs from country to country, custom to custom. As you find, different countries have different rulings as to when a person is considered an adult and the likes, where they're able to fend for themselves, as they say. So those things are to be taken into consideration. But of the things that's mentioned, لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها. A person is only to bear responsibility of that which they can afford. And I tell you, there's many stories where people, Allah al-Musta'an, and we say some cases because it's not a thing that's common, and we hope it's not common, and it's not a thing to generalize people. But you have some sisters, when they go through divorce, their husband may be paying monthly to support. If they've got children, he pays whatever he can pay to support. They want more than that. They still want him to pay as if he lives in the house, as if he's still present in their life as the husband and the father, all in the same time, as if he doesn't have now new expenses, the fact he's no longer living in that house, maybe he's married again, he has other expenses, other obligations that now become a priority for him. So what happens, they go to the law of the land, well, it's not necessarily law, but they go to these institutes, child maintenance and the likes, demanding they want an increase. And what happens, they assess the wealth, and even they decide the amount he was giving you before was too much. And then he ends up giving you less than what he was giving you prior to going to these people. Now what happens when these situations arise? Does goodness come out of it? No, only an increase of ill feeling. Now this increases in hatred. Rather than a person saying, alhamdulillah, the father, he does still spend on his children when he can with that which he can. I'm not going to make it difficult, because what these women who do these practices don't understand. If you cooperate and make things easy, unless the man is evil within himself, whenever they get more wealth, they're going to give you more wealth for their children. They're going to spend more on their children. When they get an increase of wealth, they'll spend more on their children. But when we behave in a way that's bitter, what happens? The man's vision becomes clouded with emotion and anger. So even if they wanted to spend more on their children, they refuse to, because they feel like they're giving into the mother. It becomes a permanent war. And when they fail to understand this and they cause a lot of issues, you damage a relationship that had no need to be damaged. Allah mentions, أمسكوهن بمعروف أو سرحوهن بمعروف. Either you stay together upon goodness, or you go your separate ways upon goodness. Especially when there's children involved. Why? Because the amicability that you have is going to affect the child. Because it doesn't mean, because you're not together anymore, doesn't mean you have to be enemies. It comes to a point in your life where you just accept it. You know what? We wasn't good for each other. It wasn't working out. قَدَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. We end up getting divorced. Does it mean that when there's children involved, we have to be at war until Yawm al-Qiyamah? No. That's not the reality. But unfortunately, this is the results of ignorance. You see. And people talk about healing periods and the likes. What is the best way to heal as a Muslim when going through difficulty? Return to Allah Azza wa Jalla. There is no other way better for you to heal as a Muslim, no matter what you've gone through, other than turning back to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because who is the one who can change your circumstances? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is the one that can provide for you other than Allah Azza wa Jalla? La ahad. No one. No one. Doesn't Allah say, Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'inna al-qulub? Is it not by the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tatma'innul qulub that the hearts find rest? What is that rest? It's not, even rest is not the best translation, because itmi'nan is not rest. Itmi'nan is sakina ma'ar raha wa inshirah. This is itmi'nan, that the heart becomes open. Because you know, when we go through things, the heart becomes dayyik. That's where you feel that confinement, restricted, trapped. But when Allah gives you raha wa itmi'nan, sakina, the heart becomes at ease, finds rest, it finds joy. You see? So I say, Alhamdulillah alladhi adhaba anna al-hazan. All praise is due to Allah who removed from us sorrow and grief. Yaqub alayhi salam, when he went through many adversities, innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I only complain of my sorrow and my grief to who? Allah Azza wa Jal. But unfortunately today we have a very toxic culture in the West that the Muslims unfortunately are being affected by. And even the event that we had of recent, subhanallah, we ask Allah to make it easy for the family and ask Allah to guide them to Al-Islam. They lost a young girl, 15 years old, stabbed to death, defending her friend because of a situation of a relationship prior to marriage. And this is from the mahasin of Islam, the merits of Islam. The boy and the girl are not meant to have no relationship prior to marriage. And there's a process. And when this process is observed, we protect the well-being of all individuals involved. You see? But that's a calamity. That was a calamity. But the only way to find rest and understanding is what? Returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the brothers from our community, he comes for Yawm al-Jum'ah, passed away yesterday. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. A brother from this community. So I'm not aware of the brother's name, but I've seen the picture of his face, and subhanAllah, someone who's come to the masjid for Yawm al-Jum'ah. This is the reality. This is the reality. You see? But the more we distance ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are running away from the cure. Everything else that we find in the worldly life of temporary enjoyments and pleasures, they don't cure hardship and trauma of hardship. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the point I was referring to regarding the TikTok culture, this Western culture, that event that occurred, the young girl was murdered. You find every Billy, Joe and Jill start talking on TikTok. Everyone has something to say. Like everyone feels like they deserve to have an opinion in things today. And everyone talks because they feel like I should say something. But as for the Muslim, what's Islam teach us? Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut. The one who believes in Allah in the last day, let them speak good or stay quiet. Like, don't say anything. When we see events that's going on, does it mean I have to go on social media and have my portion? No. But this is the problem today. Everyone's got something to say because they don't actually live their own life anymore. People have lost purpose. When you find the people on social media talking about every single event that's going on in the area, know that person literally got no life. That's the reality. That person's life is purposeless. They don't know what they're doing with their life. So what happens? They busy themselves living, talking about everyone else's life around them. This is the worst way to live. Islam gives us guidance. And things that bring people together is marriage. Things that draw people apart is death and funerals. But when people, and also divorce, those things separate individuals. It's not always something of ease. The problem, when we stray away from the guidance of Allah Azza wa Jal, divorce becomes something that is bitter. But when we preserve character and principle as a Muslim. Yes, you might not like the person, but when you go your separate ways, you do it upon fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's supposed to be the pinnacle of what we rely upon whenever we have to judge in our affairs. Fear of Allah Azza wa Jal and following the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When we stray from this is when we cause fasad, we cause problems. When we start to rely upon people's opinion. You see? And that's why even when there's matters of difference between a husband and wife, what did Allah command us to do? To go to someone who's hakam, someone who is wise and respected from their family, and also the same from your side of the family, and you come together and you what? You try to rectify, reconcile, if there's room for it. That's what is upon us. But today what happens, both men and women are influenced by TikTok. And let me say, no, it's not true. When they're watching reality TV shows, what happens? They go through one issue in their marriage and say, yeah, that's what they were talking about, subhanAllah. Because the mind will try to make sense of it if something is seen before. And then you start to believe in these red pill movements, these feminist movements, and the likes, and the likes, and the likes. Do we have a better guidance to how to live a happy marriage than what came in Islam? Is there anything on the face of the dunya that someone wrote a book in the last 20 years that's better than the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Abadan. And this is the problem that we have today. We're looking in the wrong places. For a good marriage, we're looking in the wrong places. Advice for marriage, we're looking in the wrong places. It's not TikTok. It's not the person that goes live and just talks rubbish for hours, that's got no life. Every single day they're live, talking about women and women problems. Every single day. That's not a role model for a man to learn how to be a man from. You see? For me personally, I find it strange. SubhanAllah, you see people, they're live after Fajr for hours. Every day, this person's live after Fajr. Like, don't you have a life? It's become a disease, a poison. And they're always talking about issues with no knowledge. And that's why when we have issues that are so easy to solve, for example, generally speaking, a person asks for advice. What does Islam say about people getting separated and the likes? And I said, either you rectify your affairs or you go your separate ways with divorce. There's no separation. What are you separating for? People act like we got a guaranteed lifespan. Do you know what? I'm going to just abandon my wife for 3 months. Yeah, who told you got 3 months, let alone 3 days? Let alone 3 hours. You see, if I can't think in my mind, is there a possibility that we can work this out? Why are we wasting each other's time? What are we wasting each other's time for? Because it's only going to get more bitter, more sour. Because what happens? You separate. Then more emotions get involved, you stop talking. Then when one of you is thinking, do you know what, I want to rectify things, that person's got an emotional build-up, they don't want to hear it. So even when it comes to making a decision of, okay, we're going to divorce now, it's bitter. It's almost impossible to happen in a good, amicable way. So what happens? The divorce is bitter. Now everything related to the rulings of what happens after divorce also becomes bitter. Especially when there's children involved. Visiting of the children. We got brothers having to go to court in a non-Muslim judicial system just to see their children. And sisters have no shame to go through that process. And when I say sisters have no shame, I'm not talking about all sisters. I'm talking about the situations when it's not justified. Because there's situations where I would encourage sisters to go through a judicial system to make sure things are done properly, depending on the individual situation, not on a general basis. And that's when obviously you cannot trust the brother, the father. There's issues of fear of danger and harm of the children and their well-being. This is a whole different matter. But as a normality, it shouldn't be the case that we have to go to court. Because if the imam speaks, we don't hold no respect for what they say. We start saying, no, he's on your side. It's got nothing to do with whose side you're on. We're not even talking about the father or the mother anymore. It's the rights of the child. It's the rights of the child. Whether you want to see the father or not, nobody actually cares about that. It's about the child. The child has every single right to have a relationship with their father. That's why the other day a brother sought my advice. And he's grown. Obviously him and his father and his mother have differences. The mother's saying, I don't want you to see the father. Well, you take your mother's statement and you shoot it out the window. It's got no basis. Your mother cannot tell you to do something that is haram and you're going to obey her. You're not allowed to cut family ties. If your mother wants to tell you, I don't want you to have a relationship with your father, she has to come with something justified based upon Islam, not because of her own trauma and her own ill feeling towards the person. La. It's not based upon that. That's why the other day I saw a post and I wish the person who shared it took heed from it the most. I wish the person who shared this post took heed from it the most. No pun intended. And it was not intentionally poetry. But they posted something about, don't let anyone encourage you to hate someone for no reason. Don't allow people to recruit you to have hatred towards another person for no reason. And it's funny when sometimes people post these posts, but it's like, Allah musta'an, what about you? Because when we share things like this, sometimes we're not sharing it, actually pondering on what it's actually saying. It sounds good, so let me just share something. Or it's only based on an emotion that they're going through, but as for the wider world, it doesn't apply to them. It only applies in my inner circle. Because how many people hate people for no reason? In the Muslim community, we have differences among people. They all claim to be Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but we can't even give each other salams. And what's so sad with these situations, and we've been speaking about it, because Islam is built upon principle. You have some brothers, they don't give you salam. They don't even come to the classes, or they'll come to the class and make sure you can see that they're not listening to the class. You ask them, have I been warned against? They say, na'am. Yes. I say, alhamdulillah, tell you, no problem. But for what? Ma fi dalil, there's no evidence for what you're being warned against. They say, you're with this sheikh. That's it. So I hate you now, I'm supposed to hate you. You can be the most friendly, kindest person upon the sunnah ever, but I have to hate you. Because I got told to hate you and not give you salam. And if my children give you salam, I have to whisper in the air, don't ever give salam to the uncle again. Why? Because someone else told you to hate that person. Because they're Ahlul Bid'ah, supposedly, sometimes. So they said, for example, you're with Sheikh so-and-so, but they'll drop the Sheikh because they don't respect certain people of knowledge like that anymore. They say he's not Sheikh. They say their first and second name. Sometimes they put abbreviation like a license plate. Allahu musta'an. So you say, okay, no problem. Am I with the Sheikh, or I just don't say he's an innovator? There's a difference, isn't it? Have you ever heard me say in a lesson the Sheikh's name? Am I with the Sheikh, or I just don't consider him to be an innovator like you do? I differ on that. And there's room for difference. I'm actually allowed to differ. And this is the problem that we have today. We apply these principles that are not principles. And when we talk about principles according to who? Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So you ask a person, the principles of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because there's only mainly three times, when a person is considered to be an innovator. And their statements are to be rejected. Memorize this. 3 times. كلامه مردود يعني ينكر كلامه ويبدع صاحب هذا الكلام. The statements rejected and they're considered to be a person of innovation. 1. إذا خالف أهل السنة والجماعة في مصادر التلقي. If they oppose أهل السنة والجماعة in the sources of evidence where we take our religion from, العقيدة الصحيحة من الكتاب والسنة وإجماع السلف. Now, we take our aqidah from where? The book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the consensus of the salaf, meaning the sahaba, the tabi'in, and those who came after them. The first 3 pious predecessors of Islam. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason, إذا خالف أصلا من أصول أهل السنة والجماعة. If they oppose one foundation of the principles of Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, then we say this person, their statements are rejected, their actions are rejected if it's from the actions opposing, and that person's min Ahl al-Bid'ah, the innovator. خلاص. Thirdly, إذا خالف في جزئية من أصول أهل السنة والجماعة اشتهر بهذه الجزئية أهل البدع. If they oppose in a partial matter, not the whole thing. For example, we have in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah principles regarding Al-Asma'i wa Sifat, principles of Allah's names and attributes. But maybe a person says something, has an issue with one of Allah's names and attributes, just one. Is it going to be the case that they're going to be considered to be an innovator or not? It depends now. Is this difference something Ahlul Bid'ah has become famous for? Is it something Ahlul Bid'ah has become famous for? And that's why some of the Salaf, some of them made issues. Let's say the early scholars, some of them made issues, had issues in some of Allah's names and attributes, but they were not considered to be Ahlul Bid'ah. For example, Ibn Abdul Barr had the issue of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ad-dahik, laughing. But Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, اتفق المسلمين على أنه من أئمة المسلمين. The Muslims had consensus that he was from the Imams of the Muslims. However, wiping over the socks is a fiqh issue, right? Wiping over the socks when you make wudu is a fiqh issue. أليس كذلك? Is not the case? But when we read books of Aqidah, do they mention it? Why do they mention it? Why do they mention a fiqh issue such as wiping over the socks in books of Aqidah, belief of the Muslim? Because اشتهر بعد فئات أهل البدع بإنكار المسح على الخفين. Because some groups and deviant sects of Ahlul Bid'ah are famous for opposing this particular principle or concession of wiping over the socks. So when we find, and this is just a reminder, a benefit, and I'm going to show you the relevance soon. When someone comes to say, don't go to this class, don't go to that masjid, and they say, and you say, why? And they don't say, قال الله وقال الرسول وأجمع عليه السلف. They say, because my sheikh said, or because he works with this person, or he loves this person because he follows them on social media. It doesn't mean that he loves them at all. Doesn't mean that at all. Then you stay away from those people. Because those people will take you away from knowledge. And it was sad, I was speaking to one brother and I said to Akhi, like, you know Arabic language, don't even listen to these guys. Go straight to Sheikh Fawzan. Go straight to Sheikh Uthaymeen. Listen, Sheikh Uthaymeen, all of his lessons are there on his website, everything. Go to his mu'assasa, his charity, you can buy all his books. And all of the books that were mufarragh from his lessons that were made into books from his audio lessons. Go and study from the Sheikh. Because in the Sheikh's life, he was asked, someone from another country listens to your lectures from far, online, and they still consider from your students. He said, Naam, that's one of my students. But they say to you, no, it's not the same, you have to study in the masjid. When you go to the masjid to study with these guys, they're just warning you from this one, warning you from that one. You're not going to attain knowledge. You're not going to attain knowledge. Can you clarify the third reason, please? You mentioned it in a partial matter. So, as I mentioned, for example, wiping over the socks. This is a matter that's juz'i. It's not an asl. You see, it's a partial matter. It's a partial issue. Shay juz'i. Now, this is an issue that Ahlul Bid'ah are famous for opposing. Like the Rafida, the Shia, Ahlul Tasawwuf. They oppose this. So this is something known if a person makes inkar of Mas'al al-Khuffayn huwa min Ahlul Bid'ah. This person is from Ahlul Bid'ah. It becomes a sign. For example, you have some that will not only take you out of being Ahlul Sunnah but also take you out of Islam. You see? For example, Al-Quraniyun. Yunkiruna Sunnah. They oppose, they reject the Sunnah. This is not Muslim. You see? So not only are you opposing Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you're also opposing Islam. Then you have those who curse the Sahaba. You see? So anyone who speaks ill of the Sahaba, you know, khalas, huwa min Ahlul Bid'ah. So we know from these matters, the differences, where we're able to make clarity, to understand there are foundations that the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, meaning the methodology of those who follow the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, is built upon principle. Whoever opposes that principle, that is when we start to say people are from Ahlul Bid'ah. Now, why do I mention this? I've known of situations, a brother, he's Salafi, he's upon the Sunnah, but he goes to a particular masjid that some who attribute themselves to the Sunnah say they're not from the Ahlul Sunnah. Is it Ahlul Bid'ah? Based on, Sheikh said they don't agree with my Sheikh, like this stuff. So his wife said to me, if you don't stop going to this masjid, you have to divorce me. Madness. So what happens? She gets divorced, ends up becoming third or fourth wife, and then lives in a state of poverty. And Allah said them to get divorced, and that becomes the story of their life. But you left someone who, just because you got told the masjid is not upon the Sunnah, not based upon principles. So what happens? When we base our marital advice on opinions, not Quran and Sunnah, then we find ourselves in issues. I have a situation to hear a brother come home from studying abroad, comes home to find out his wife's not his wife anymore. They said you have to use khula because your husband's from Ahlul Bid'ah. Allah musta'an. And you find people ask the funniest of questions. And as I mentioned to you, when it comes to these matters, if you want to live a happy marital life, then you have to follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we don't hate anyone except for unless Allah hates them. We don't love anyone unless Allah loves them. That's al-wala wal-bara. Khalas. When we speak about al-mahabba, love for the sake of Allah, is four matters. Hub man yuhibbuhu Allah, love those who Allah loves. Wa hubbul amal alladhi yuhibbuhu Allah, loving the actions that Allah loves. Wa hubbul makan alladhi yuhibbuhu Allah, loving the places Allah loves. Wa hubbul zaman alladhi yuhibbuhu Allah ta'ala, and loving the times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. This is for love. The same applies for hatred. We hate the people Allah hates, the places Allah hates, the times Allah hates, The actions Allah hates. And that's something that we have to condition our emotions to be built upon. Because for example, now someone died, they're not Muslim. How do we behave? They start fundraising and stuff. I'm not paying for the funeral because they died upon Islam. The funeral proceeds are going to be in away country to Al-Islam. You see, we have to remove the emotion, the emotional investment. Because Allah al-Musta'an, those are the most testing times. Marriage and death. And if we look at what happened in Iraq, subhanallah, a marriage, free mixing, music, what happens? Over 100 people dead. Over 100 people dead. Their last moments that they're going to be resurrected upon is disobedience to who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are also the factors that lead towards divorce. When marriage is not built upon ikhlas, when Islam is not built upon that which is good, it's going to be void of barakah. It will be void. Can you imagine what's supposed to be the best day of your life becomes the worst day? That what's supposed to be the best day of your life becomes the worst day. That's why when we mention be good to enjoy upon goodness or separate upon goodness, that only comes with taqwa. That only comes with taqwa. Allah also mentioned وَلَا تُضَارَّ وَالِدَةٌ بِوَلِدِهَا وَلَا مَوْلُودٌ لَهُ بِوَلَدِهِ وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. So, in general, children are not meant to be used as objects to cause harm to the other parent. And what is mentioned by the Tafseer that Mujahid said regarding this, it doesn't mean like the father should not take the child away from the mother to cause her harm out of spite. Nor should the mother encourage the father to take the child to cause him harm and difficulty. For example, a sister gets divorced. She has children. And she said, when you get married, I want you to take the children. She doesn't want him to take the children except for the fact she wants to cause him hardship. You see? Or the father says to the wife, the ex-wife, if you get married again, I'm taking the children. He doesn't even want to take the children. He doesn't want to bear the difficulty of raising the children. He wants to cause hardship towards the mother. This is not permitted. This is what we've been prohibited from. Don't use the children as fuel to cause pain to the other person. And that's what you find happening today. I've been through this, ikhwan, so I'm going to tell you the brothers a very important advice. When you get tested with your children, detach yourself. Detach yourself and seek aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whenever you find a woman, your ex-wife, using the children against you, detach yourself. Act like you don't care. Even if you care, act like you don't care. What do I mean by this? They are using the child as a weapon. So when you show them that you are affected by this, they are winning. And they will continue to use the children as a weapon against you. But when you don't care, or you تظاهر or تظهر أنك لا تبالي, or you make it as if you don't care, it's only a matter of time they'll get bored of the game. And they may realize the importance of the parent, the father's role in the child's life. They send you a message that's going to make your blood boil. If you have to go by yourself and you don't have to respond, then do that, khalas. But don't let them ever see the response. Don't let them ever see the impact it has on you. Because what's going to happen? The shaitan's going to keep coming to them and they're not going to stop. You see? Because I've watched brothers, even people I grew up with that are not Muslim, they were prevented from having a life with their children, they became majnoon. They became mentally unwell. They took to drugs and alcohol. They can't even be a father now, even if they wanted to. Who's to blame for that? The mother's to blame. And to be clear, I'm talking about situations where it's not justified. Situations where it's not justified. But when a woman celebrates and is encouraged to prevent the father from having a relationship with the child, you have fooled yourself. You have deceived yourself to think you are victorious and you're a winner. Because when your child grows older and comes to learn that no, the father wanted to have involvement in the child's life, the first person who's going to become hated is who? That same mother. And wallahi, we've heard stories of the mother getting beaten up by the child. Wal-iyadhu billah. The hatred of the child being prevented from seeing their father their whole life, thinking the father didn't want nothing to do with them. And remember, children, they are longing to have a relationship with both of their parents. But when they come to learn that the father was pushed away and the child was not able to have a relationship with the father because of the mother, the number one enemy becomes the mother. And so we've been prevented. Do not use your children as ammunition to cause hatred between one another. Because it's not fair on the child either. That child will grow up with an emotional imbalance. And that will reflect in the behavior of the child. Because sometimes when we look at a child and we look at their behavior, the first we say, oh, this child is just bad, is naughty. Sometimes that behavior is a cry for help. It's a seeking of attention. Because there's a greater issue that they don't actually know how to express. I mean, what child actually understands why they can't have a relationship with their father? They don't understand this stuff. They're not going to understand it. So when they find themselves living that experience, what happens? They have a bad expression of feelings. Because they don't know how to express how they feel. They become angry all the time. Why? Because something is missing in their life and they can't make sense of it. You see? And this is the problem that we find in communities today. When we have issues of teenagers murdering each other and the likes, sometimes these are the results of an emotional, unstable upbringing. You see? Because the child has just been a victim of emotional warfare. So what happens, like for example, when you hear a boy, teenager, killing a girl, stabbing a girl, the first thing comes to my mind, this is mentally disturbing. This person cannot be of sound mind. Or they've been through so much trauma and inclined to so much evil, this has become a habit for them. They may have stabbed many people and have literally become emotionally detached from that which occurs in that process. This is a problem, you see. But sometimes we only acknowledge these issues at the final consequence and we miss everything that was part of the build-up. Everything that led to that final moment, we didn't acknowledge it. And that sometimes we are to blame. Because in these situations, everyone's talking about the parents. What about the parents? No, this is not about the parents, it's about the society. It's the society that we are living in. Because how is it there's so many brothers in our community alone, they don't see their children. And they want to see their children. You see? The thing is, you know they say money can't buy you happiness. But you can do things that make you happy with money. That's the reality. But money doesn't buy you happiness. But you can do things that make you happy with money. For example, I like to travel. It makes me happy. My favorite part's not the destination, it's just being on the plane. That makes me happy. That's my personal happiness. So even if I traveled for 2 hours on a plane, I enjoy that process of walking down the corridors to the plane. I like that whole process. That's my happiness. You see? But now with a child, for example, they're going to be happy the moment they get a letter from their dad and a card and it has £10. But that enjoyment is for 1 minute. That joy, you just got £10 from your dad, it lasts for 1 minute. You don't have a relationship with your dad. £10, oh, your dad gave you this money, £10. Oh, I'm going to buy something, Roblox. Da, 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 da. But then now, there's nothing else. And then what happens? There's no relationship. It's just £10 here and there, £20. Oh, you need trainers. Okay, you got trainers. But there's no relationship with the father and the child. So now, that emotional attachment is lost. When they think of the father, they think of Barclays, Monzo, Lloyd's TSB. The father becomes a living bank. There's no other emotional attachment. You see? And another thing that happens, why people join gangs? Why people join gangs? Because they feel a void of love. And that also happens when the child is prevented from the father, or vice versa. So what happens? There's an imbalance of feeling loved. So then you go to a place, I'm not even going to call it fake love because it is somewhat sincere, but it's in the wrong place. Because I was once that child. We go to the estate and we see our friends. That's our friends, that's just the reality. They were our friends. They weren't the best of friends to have, but that was our friends. And when we was around them, what did we feel? We felt love. Was that love good? No. That love was toxic. Because everything that love comes with on the streets is toxic. So what happens? I feel like when I'm at home, I don't have a relationship with my father. My mother's always cussing and speaking bad of my father. There's no love in the household. So I want to spend most of my time on the block, on the estate, in this place, that place, where I feel like I'm getting love. But that love that I feel like I'm getting is accompanied by everything that is destructive. Especially for children in gangs. We talk about gangs because it's a reality that we live in. We don't live in Knightsbridge. We don't live in Twickenham, by Richmond Park and the likes. You see? We live here. Croydon, Brixton, Peckham, these areas that are not beautiful. You see? So now, when they see love is going to stand on this London road, stand from 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, doing nothing. Waiting to be recruited by someone who says, I can put you on a job, make you some money. So you start selling drugs. Then what happens? Oh, I can buy trainers, I can buy this, I can buy a watch. So then it comes with attention. So I don't actually love anyone, I love the attention. So everything that a person starts to love in that process becomes destructive. Destructive. And when those things are removed from them, what happens? They break down. Because now they don't know how to function with anything else. They haven't had any good relationship in their life, so they don't know how to have a good relationship. Their love is for materialistic things that we know, as Allah mentions, we'll be tested with them. We'll be tested with having it and not having it. You see? And this is what's causing a lot of dysfunction in many of our communities. You see? And when one starts to feel like the mother can play the role of the mother and the father, that is the heart of misguidance. That's not your job. That's not your job. Also, another point, when it comes to disciplining children, sometimes you find the mother opposes the father's methodology of discipline. And I'm not talking about those who go extreme. But you have to understand, you play a different role. The father puts the child in check. Because what you find also happens, when the child is going bad and astray, who gets called? The father. But in the process of trying to raise them and keep them in check, there was opposition. Like I can remember my upbringing, for example, me and my older brother, and my brother just under me, yeah, we got beats. We got beats. And I remember one time my dad said, like, he apologized. I said, no, I'm cool. It just made me strong. Like, I was one of the strongest in my year. I didn't mind. Like, it is what it is. But my youngest two didn't get beats. And I can see the difference. There is a major difference. A major difference in respect and reverence towards those who are older than you. You see? Because if we look at, for example, the laws of this land, when they started to push these initiatives of not disciplining the children with beating, it wasn't based on thousands of cases. It was based on one or two cases that went wrong. Baby P and other than this. But now everyone's suffering from the decision that was made as a result of this. Because when a father gives the child a smack, I'm not talking about a combo, a punch, a hook, a jab, no. Something that lets your skin sting for a little bit. What does it do? It teaches you your actions have consequences. You see, because now what happens, you tell a child off, you raise your voice, they start saying, is that what you're going to do? Like when you look at children's supermarket today, now since there's no discipline for children, there's every autism, ADHD is on the rise. Let me throw myself on the floor in Tesco back in the day, see how fast I end up sitting upright. Discipline has a major role in the child's upbringing. We're not talking about those who go overboard and extreme, no. But for example, how do you know that a fire is hot? By getting burnt. When you touch a fire and you feel the flame, what happens? You learn, don't do it again. You see? Because sometimes, for example, you know, people from the age of 1 to 7, the child does not really understand your explanation. Even as a parent, you're going to struggle trying to dumb down your language to the level of the child. You see? But you don't find, unless someone is sick, that when they beat their child, they enjoy it. Unless they have a sickness. Only a person who has a sickness in their heart and a mental sickness will enjoy beating a child. You see? But this is the problem. When there's dysfunction in the upbringing of the child. Because, for example, some children will learn, okay, my mum and dad's not together, but guess what? I got 2 houses. It's not always a bad thing. It's all about the perspective that is given to them. You see? But this using children as emotional warfare is causing major harm to our communities. Major harm. And we're not even realizing it. And why? Because we turn away from the guidance of Islam. As I said, it's embarrassing as Muslims that we can't come to the masjid and sort out our differences to be able to make sure the father and the mother can see the children. The fact we have to go to the court for this is embarrassing, is shameful. And it shows that those who are making us have to take these steps, they are straying from the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah also mentions وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. Even the child of the father is not allowed to cause harm to the mother of the child. You see, i.e. the father's children, if he's divorced, they can't cause harm towards the mother and cause problems. They are supposed, everyone is to be upright and deal with each other with goodness. Deal with each other with goodness. And that's why we have principles. Obviously, sometimes we're going to get emotional. Our emotions get the better of us, but we have to rectify. We have to rectify. Also, let's say, for example, a person isn't able to feed, then they can go and get someone else to feed the child. But when you get someone else to feed the child, they have to be paid their wage. You have to pay them and give them support financially for nursing your child. Another thing that's mentioned by Ibn Kathir, when it comes to fitam, weaning the child, taking them away from breastfeeding, this is to be done فإن أراد فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما. This is to be done by consultation of both parents. It says not for one parent alone to make the decision that they're going to stop breastfeeding their child. Both parents have to come into agreement. And it has to be based upon the well-being of the child. You see, the mum can't say, I'm tired. This is your ajr in Allah. Be patient. You'll be rewarded with Allah Azza wa Jal. Don't say, I'm tired of being a mother. I don't want to breastfeed anymore. That is a ni'mah from Allah, that Allah has allowed you to have a child and also be able to feed the child. Some women have children, their children won't suckle from them. They're not able to. They don't even produce milk. But that process is the closest relationship you have to your child. That you are feeding that child out of love and mercy. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, if that child is raised correctly, and when that time comes, that they say, once an adult, twice a child. When you become the child again, when you're too old to function, that same child who is now an adult is going to care for you. It's going to make sure they take care of your well-being. You see? But if they don't have that love, what's going to happen? Old ladies daycare center. We have a new application. And they're going to send you in a care home. And that's it. They say they've done their job. You see? But this is the reality. When we're speaking about divorce, it's very important that we return back to the guidance of Islam. That our differences, we have emotional differences, put that aside, make it work for the children. I.e., what's in the best interest of the child. And that means sometimes you have to make certain sacrifices, because a person decided to get married, a person decided to have a child. But of the things that one is also to understand, men and women are not the same, and they never ever will be the same, no matter what society is pushing. It's not possible. Men will be men, women will be women. When we start behaving as Allah has created us, we also find better functionality between us, better cohesion. But when you find everyone else trying to play the other's role and stepping out of the nature of how they've been created, this is also another factor of dysfunction. Let those who don't like it, not like it. We don't care about that. Our main focus is, this is how Allah created us. This is the nature Allah created us upon. And when we uphold those characteristics that we are known for as men and women, and follow the best of guidance of men and women, then we'll find ourselves upon goodness. But ideally, the best situation when you have dispute, husband and wife, divorced, co-parenting, judge according to Islam. Facilitate for the children, don't have to go to the court. We shouldn't have to go to the court. And any brother who's been prevented from seeing their children, every Eid, my advice, every Eid, get a card, write the date of the card and put money in that card and seal it. For every Eid, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, twice a year. Save for it, put that money in the envelope. When you get to see your children for the first time, when they may be older, maybe 18 then, give them all of those cards. And make sure it has the date in it. Make sure it has the date in it. From the year you was not able to see your child until the moment you get to see your child again, make sure you have this ready for them. You see? And explain to them, I wanted to have a relationship with you. قَدَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. It was prevented from me. You do your best not to make them hate the mother, because they will end up hating the mother when they come to realize you wanted to be a part of their life. I'm talking about those who have been prevented from having a relationship with their children unjustly. As for the brothers who are tyrants, transgressors, and they're deserving of being withheld from their children, then I'm not talking about these people. Before anyone comes and says, but what about these situations? We're not talking about those situations. We're talking about situations when it's done unjustly. You see. So that's my advice, because I know many brothers are going through this. And when you know brothers, give them the same advice. One, detach themselves from the situation. Anything that's out of your control, rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Get your cards, Eid Mubarak, date it, Eid al-Fitr this year, put in your change. Eid al-Adha this year, put in your change. The moment you see your child, the day you're going to see your child, the first thing that you do, say Salaamu Alaikum, this is for you. Let them have a moment. Write a little message in there. Let them have a moment before anything, because you're going to need to embrace them after that moment, because it's going to be an emotional moment, because they will learn that what they have been raised to believe was not the case, and they'll have an emotional breakdown. All they need is you to support them in that moment, because as the men, as fathers, we have to know we're built different. The child is not, we're not like the child, so we can't behave like the child that cries and like they want ice cream. No, you got to show strength and backbone. You see, some of us, as soon as we don't get to see our children, we go into some emotional dark closet. Forget that. You're a man. Forget that. I'm not saying don't be emotional, but you have to be strong, because you still have to live. Because as I said to you, there's people who have been so damaged, even when they get to see their children, they're not even able to be a father to their children, because their life is a mess, because they now allowed trauma to direct their course of life. La, not the Muslim. The Muslim knows whatever happens in their life is by the decree of who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yes, you know what? I might get tested with my children. Okay, that's my test. That is my test. Because in your children and your wives and all of your wealth, all of these things that you enjoy is a test for you. So you're going to be tested with these things. You see? And it's only a matter of time after hardship comes, ease. It's only a matter of time after hardship comes, ease. And best believe me, Allah is the one who said it. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Allah has said it. With hardship comes ease. You just got to wait for it. You just have to wait for it. And sometimes that ease is maut. Sometimes that ease is death. When you uphold the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and death comes to you and you get placed in your grave and you're shown Jannah from your grave, are you going to remember not being able to see your children? Abadan. Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'innu al-qulub. Is it not by the remembrance of Allah the hearts find rest? All of these things are temporary. All of these things are temporary. Don't worry, Jannah is ahead of us. That is the pursuit. Like whatever hardship you go through, don't allow it to distract you from pursuing Al-Jannah. Nothing is worth that sacrifice. Because the moment you get to see Jannah from your grave, didn't see your children for how many years? I don't even remember that. What children? That's the reality. You're going to be saying, Ya Allah, aqim as-sa'a, establish the final hour now. You was poor for your whole life. And then you're shown Jannah. You know what poverty? I don't know poverty. You see? That's the reality. You know? And that's what we're seeking. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who our graves are furnished from the furniture of Jannah and are scented from the scents of Jannah. Allahumma ameen. And we ask Allah to rectify the affairs of the Muslims and to relieve those who are going through hardship and adversity with ease. Allahumma ameen. ونكتفي بهذا القدر ونصلي وسلم على نبينا وحبيب محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صاحب المزمار